Well, my issue is mass atrocity crimes, genocide, ethnic cleansing, major war crimes, crimes against humanity. The cases of Cambodia, Bosnia, Rwanda, Darfur, they're all etched in our memory in recent decades. We know the international community has screwed up very badly in dealing with this subject. A big breakthrough in global governance was in fact achieved in 2005 when at the UN World Summit there was unanimous agreement on a new conceptual approach to this issue, not in terms of anyone's right to intervene, humanitarian intervention, but rather the new concept of the responsibility to protect. The primary responsibility for stopping atrocity crimes belongs with the sovereign state itself, but when that state is unable or unwilling to so act, then the responsibility shifts to the wider international community to act in whatever way is appropriate to prevent or to stop those atrocity crimes occurring. That was the breakthrough that's been made. The gap that remains is to implement this effectively in practice. And this is a very complex business, and there's 5 specific strategies that we can identify as are necessary. The first thing is to get general worldwide acceptance of what are the cases that require this kind of attention and activity. What are the criteria? And here the idea we want to advocate is that of an authoritative, eminent person's watch list doing just that job. The second issue is to ensure that throughout the world there's appropriate civilian capability, diplomatic, civilian administrators, policing in particular, to do some of the jobs that are crucial if you're going to prevent or stop these atrocity crimes occurring. The third, for extreme cases which will require military intervention, Rwanda being the classic example, what can we do to improve standby capability, or better still, create something in the nature of a global UN voluntary standing force, an issue that's been around for a long time. And then what do we do finally to just mobilize the necessary political will, both at the level of governments and also from underneath civil society? Who's got responsibility to do what? Well, we've got things to say about all of that in this proposal. It's complex, but the key players are clearly the UN, the General Assembly, but more particularly the Secretary General and organs within the UN system, the regional organizations, Africa Union, the NATO, OSCE, and of course the European Union. National governments, not only the big guys, the Americans, the P5, but also all those other national governments that are capable of contributing resources and energy to the resolution of these issues. And then the major global NGOs, the Global Centre for the Responsibility to Protect, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty, the major relief organisations, the International Crisis Group. Each one of these categories of players have an important initiating and delivery role to perform. What's new in all of this? Not a great deal in the sense of the ideas. They've all been around. The problem is to implement them. The idea of sovereignty being something other than conveying immunity and a license to kill, I guess that's a new idea, the responsibility to protect itself. But in terms of the specific policy responses, the idea of a watch list is new and is deliverable. I think in the short term, the idea of a global police force is relatively new, and that's not deliverable in the short term, that's for sure. But there's a lot of other things that are. Institutional triggering capacity, focal points within national governments, within intergovernmental organisations, to do the early warning, to do the initiation of the decision-making process. We can do much better on that front, and we can do much better in terms of preparing civilian and military standby capability so that when these cases arise that do involve intervention, not just military intervention, but other forms of assistance and support as well, often with the cooperation of the governments in question, those resources will in fact be there. And we can do something in terms of mobilizing political will to create the institutional support mechanisms in the global non-government organization community and within government and intergovernmental institutions themselves. Who has to do what in terms of the ultimate responsibility? The primary responsibility is that of the leadership of the key players that I've mentioned, within the UN, within intergovernmental organizations, within national governments, within the key international NGOs that have got effective clout in all these areas. But beyond that, there's a huge support responsibility that is involved. Influential voices in academia, the media, in global policy initiating bodies like the World Economic Forum. Civil society more generally, we want to find ways of generating and sustaining the pressure that's necessary to ensure not just that there'll be some kind of generalized response to these cases, but a hard-edged, effective response. Because at the end of the day, what we have to assure everybody, at whatever level we're at, that whatever else we screw up again, we don't screw up our response to the kinds of atrocity crimes that have made us so angry and ashamed of our lack of behaviour and response in the past.
Great, Gareth. Thanks.